Hey, what's up, Chad?
Yo, hello.
How's it going?
What's going on, buddy?
Not too much. So we want to focus on drafting today.
Yes.
So let's get a little bit of like background. Today's goals, drafting. So what's the elo bracket of the competitive team that you coach?
I guess we can just call it Emerald for now.
I'm gonna screen share as well, so you have like a live of my screen.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I was watching your stream.
Emerald team, you said? Emerald team.
Uh,
Okay, cool. And then what would you say is like the reason for today's session? You're saying like you guys are letting a lot of games slip, and then your players are saying after the game like that the draft is really hard.
no, just more of like self-reflecting because obviously, as you know, I've been playing competitive for a while. I think I have a fairly good idea when it comes to macro, and also micro. I would say where I lack the most, and it's because I've been the least involved even when we played on a team together, and that was in a lot of the drafting. Usually, coaches
Okay.
and other like laners where we do the draft and I'd be like, "Yep, just put me on a facilitator and call it a day,"
Yeah,
and I
yeah, I
never
gotcha.
got involved. So I just kind of know that's my weak point,
Okay,
just from the
cool.
lack of practice.
So from a coaching standpoint, this can help a lot because you can obviously set up your players for success even before the game starts. I'm gonna give you sort of a framework of what I use when I'm thinking about draft or when I'm thinking about team comps and how they interact and stuff like this. And you might find it really helpful. Again, like I don't, it's not black and white. It's not like Faker knows everything about every role and there's a right and a wrong and no other player in the world knows these kind of things, right? That's not really
Yeah,
how it goes down. It's more everyone has unique experiences and everyone needs to come up with their own rules and framework to help them get through drafts and games. And the reason draft is so hard is because it's complex as shit and there's only 30 seconds on the clock. That's like a huge factor as to why certain drafts go awry. So I'm going to
yeah,
help break down this kind of stuff for you. So I think like the first thing is to draft with a purpose in mind. You can see this. Is this text like okay for you?
yeah,
Okay,
yep,
cool. So draft with a purpose in mind. I think from the early phases of your draft, depending on the picks that you've gone for so far, you might have staple picks as a team. And knowing a goal of your composition based on some of those picks, strengths, and weaknesses is really important. So when you're telling your players, like, let's look to take as many fights as possible, or like, are we an early game skirmish team composition? Are we okay sacking a couple dragons to reach a higher goal? Like knowing this ahead of time can be really helpful for players so that they don't panic or they don't make irrational decisions in game. Any questions or thoughts on that?
no, that kind of makes sense.
And then we'll go over meta. So I use this website, gol.gg. Have you heard or seen it before?
I have not.
Okay, so it brings us to, I'll show you just the basics of navigating it. It brings us to the esports site that tracks every pro game globally. And these are the top four regions, right? So if you go by region, this is the LPL, and you go to picks and bans, this is what the meta is. Not just in LPL, you kind of can compare notes if you don't think that's like the strongest region. You can go LEC or LCK, but I'll use LPL just as an example. And we go picks and bans. And so this tells us over a vast majority of games what the meta looks like. So what is being permabanned, what is being picked in each role. And you have to have a conversation with your team. Do we want to be a meta team or do we want to be an off meta team? And I think it's important that certain players are a little bit aligned of like, it's okay to have a couple players that are like, I'm much better. I'm on my comfort picks and I cannot play some of these champions. So as long as your team vocalizes that and sort of knows that and knows that the trade off is there, that you're getting more experience on a set champion, that can help you a lot. But to ignore this kind of data is very dangerous as a team because there can be a lot of drafts that go through where it's like the enemy team just has the better version of your champion in many different roles, and it makes the game a lot harder to play. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
So I would have a conversation with your team about, okay, so how do we feel about these champions or whatever? Like you can go like the top five, top six, top seven of your roles. And because the numbers are so vast, this tells us what champions are being blind picked in roles, right? the difference between a
Right.
blind pick and a counter pick. So the ones that you see down here, these are your counter picks, and the ones that you see up here, these are typically your blind picks, the ones that shape compositions, right?
Yeah, then no, that makes sense.
So if you go back here, so answer the question, is it going to be mandatory for players to pick up and learn champions? It doesn't have to be every single champion, obviously, because the meta is going to swap out. But to say I'm a competitive top laner, I want to do my best, and you don't know a single one of these 5 champions to a proficient level where you can blind it in scrims, that's a big problem, right? Or at
Yeah.
least I would say that's a big problem. You want to hold yourself to a higher standard, and say, "Oh, I'm too old. I can't learn a new champion or whatever." When you guys have like a lot of time in scrims, because do you guys play like 3 times a week?
Yes.
So that's at least 15 games. And if you guys have a match, or not 15 games, what am I saying? That's at least 9 games of competitive. And if you guys have a match day or a best of 3, that's the one where you want to like obviously pick your best shit. But that's like 6 games potentially if you do 3 blocks, of let's try to test out the best picks that we can.
Yeah, they also have a requirement to play 15 solo queue games a week, which they all hold themselves to.
Good. Right on. Yeah, that's really good. So then understanding what a B1 champion is. So what makes a B1 champion possible or good, are the fact that they're malleable, or they're so strong that they're so hard to counter, or they're a piece of a bigger puzzle. So these are some B1s, and the ones in brackets are a little bit more conditional and have certain things that they have to be beside. But these kind of B1s are stuff that you can talk about as a team of which one of these or which couple of these can we look to shape comps around. Because I think, obviously, if you're on blue side, you haven't seen a single thing from the enemy team, right? And so it's important just to know that if you're ignoring this and going off meta, just the downside is, like I said, like you're going to be in some drafts that are just really, really hard from the get go. So next I'm going to go over like some framework ideas that I use to do with the roles. So in draft, I like to think of junglers. There's 2 types of junglers. There's low econ engagers and in utility champions. And there's full clear high econ carries. Would you agree with that? Or do you have any like light you'd like to shed? Because you said yourself like you're down for your team to just pick you a facilitator.
Yeah, yeah, it's there's never a far few in between. Yeah, either you're a full utility or yeah, you're just a full clearing Andy.
Yeah, and there's
Yeah,
advantages
there's no
to
in
and
between.
disadvantages to both, right?
Yeah.
And we'll talk about after I draw the paint. After I draw the picture of like what the 5 roles look like, we'll mix and match of like how do the puzzle pieces actually fit. So there's low econ junglers on the patch that are really strong that have certain conditions. Skarner is independent of conditions. He just needs damage around him, which is really nice. Poppy needs dash champions to counter. Maokai would need like damage, same thing. And then Sejuani needs melees, this kind of stuff. And then the carry jungler stuff like Lilia hard counters melees. Xin, Pantheon, Vi are all independent. Nefiri needs CC setup. And Nocturne needs a diver, stuff like this. So there's obviously more to it than just these champions, but I just wanted to give some examples.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Next, we'll talk about top lane. Two types of top lane, or sorry, 3 types of top lane, just to keep things like not too complex, but not too simple. So you've got your low econ tanks that can be weak sided. You've got your high econ carries that want a facilitator jungle. So you can already see like how some of the puzzle pieces would fit. Sorry, if you're going to go for a low econ jungler, you're going to want a high econ carry or a hybrid top laner. And the reason I mentioned hybrids is because there's champions that exist that do both. So Renekton's like the best example. Gnar is like one of the best examples of a Gnar player can play super in your face, super I'm the main character and you're going to facilitate for me, or they can be a piece of the puzzle that can be ignored for a little bit. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
So knowing, are we picking the lane bully or are we picking the counter to the lane bully? So example of the meta today is Jace Rumble met by Sion, and Sion needs a carry jungler. So that's just any questions so far. Stop me if I'm going like
Yeah, no, no, no.
fast or
This,
slower.
yeah, no, this is all making sense. So I
Okay.
guess like eventually, once we go through the roles in there, etc., and this is what you're thinking about when you draft. So then simply like, I guess, well, I'll have more questions on is like I know red side is like draft dependent off technically what say blue side picks, but say like when you're red side and they be one of these champions that you're talking about that you recommend me do, how in pick order is it best to try to shape a comp of which is more flexible, right?
Yeah,
Because I think
yeah.
like usually like response was like in what I've been seeing lately it's like people like B1 Varus or like B1 Jinx. So then usually I go like 80 carry, and then after that I'm like, oh, what's the best thing to blind next? Typically it ends up being jungle for me because
Yep,
I feel like
yep, for sure.
junglers are obviously not as counterable. So then they respond, and then like I said, it's kind of like what that's kind of where I get lost.
Yeah. So
Um,
let me give you the framework, and then we'll go
yeah.
through what puzzle pieces fit other, and then we can get into specific examples if you have screenshots of drafts, or we can
Yeah.
just like talk about specific openings or
Okay.
whatever. But at the level that you guys are playing at, it's very likely you guys are not losing to meta or hard counters. You guys are usually losing based on your inability to execute on your own win conditions. I'd say like you put two, even like master teams at this point, you put two master teams against each other. It's not so often it's like our comp against your comp. It's like we succeeded in our comp's identity and you guys failed.
Yeah.
It's not so like
It's not so that you got
champion.
counterpicked, etc.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's like our teamwork was so good around our mid jungle. Sometimes draft is like independent. You could look at a mid jungle and be like, you guys should lose, and then they win, and it's like very convoluted that way. So we'll keep going. So there's your top laners. 80 carries, you've got utility versus hyper carries, and then the really, really important, not third category, but like attribute is to go for lane phase control. And this has a lot to do with support counterpick because if I'm drafting on red side, that usually means that I've got to blind a support, right? Because R5 typically goes to your top laner. And again, this kind of conversation, it doesn't convert one to one to pro play because what we see in pro play right now, because there's so
Right.
many OP solo laners, they'll pick mid, top, and jungle all in the first three. But we know in our experience in competitive play that blinding ADC gives a lot more room for seeing different threats in the team composition and then getting a more unique mid laner or a good top lane counter pick, right? That
Yeah.
might have higher payoff or at least give that player a fighting chance. Because obviously, like just blinding Jace at the Emerald level and then executing Jace's win conditions is very fucking hard, right? So the players have to be fucking world class if they're gonna be blinding Jace. So
Yeah, you'll see that in one of the draft things I did. Of the mistake, just hearing you now, I already had made a mistake where I wanted my top laner to practice these blind picks because normally he doesn't play a lot of blind picks, but I'm trying to get him into like the Cassante, Aatrox, Gnar meta, Renekton, things like this because he's like a skirmishing top laner that will put on tanks, but then he like fights like he's a Renekton or a Gnar.
right,
So I tried to like blind a Cassante, and then they counter with a Lowy, and yeah, I'll just tell you, it didn't go well.
gotcha, yeah. So
But
that
so
can be
these are the types of
punishing.
mistakes like I'm trying to avoid.
Yep. So the last thing I'll say about the drafting with lane phase control in mind is because if you're blinding a support, the strongest supports to be blinding right now are engaged supports, like tank supports, which have little to no lane control. So what'll happen at this level in competitive is we blind our support and we pick a tank, and let's just use a rough example. So we've got Tristana and Alistar on our side. You say, fuck the idea of a team comp. We're just going to blast you in lanes so insanely hard with like Caitlyn Lux or Caitlyn Nico or Caitlyn Mel or whatever, like a combo champion that just pushes you into oblivion. And you guys fall so far behind in your lane, you don't actually get to see what like Alistar and Tristana are never entering the mid game because they got blasted so hard, their tower's just gone. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah,
So
makes sense.
when you're drafting, you really have to be careful of okay, if we're going for like a Kaisa blind pick or something like that, we really need to make sure we're securing ourselves enough lane phase control to get our levels and early game gold. Because if you're getting the enemy team just gets a free BF buy on you and you're getting like complete poor items and shit, like you lose dragon and then the game slips away from you, right?
Yeah.
So this is why we see Varus in the meta right now because he just fits so many different categories. He's hard to punish. He's super safe. His transition into mid lane, he can just one shot waves. He has viable build paths. If he needs to be a main character, he can. And he has CC. So this is why Varus appears so much in the meta right now. And then so Ezreal, MF, Corki, Jin, Ashe. These are all types of champions that have a really strong lane control strength or like attribute. So that's why I'm mentioning that these are a lot of blindable 80 carries that you can grab up with a sort of bigger picture in mind of like, we're going to play a team fight comp. We're going to grab MF so that she can get through the lane. And then we're going to pick Rel beside her so that our mid late game is like almost guaranteed. And MF's lane phase is pretty strong. So it's going to be pretty hard for any like shenanigans where they're trying to end the game before we get online. Right.
Right.
Next, this is the topic I know the most about. So there's 4 lines. Basically, support. It's important to understand what types of support. So I've done over the years, I've always looked at 4 different attributes of supports, and that's all in, control, or counter engage, enchanter, and mages. And so sort of like Pokemon, the types have like counters to each other, right? So all in typically beats enchanter and mage, because they can look to 100 to 0 their opponents. The counter engagers, so like Braum will counter Nautilus, because he has very strong like protection tools or whatever. Enchanters and mages typically counter each other. There's a lot of different like specific matchups and stuff you can get into. And then control champions lose to enchanters and mages, because if you're playing like Taric and you're into like Soraka or something like that, you're gonna have a bad time. Does that make sense a little bit?
Yes. Oh, sorry. I don't know if my push to talk worked.
Oh, you're good. You're good. So yeah. So again, like picking your bot lane and picking either your ADC or your support or both, with the idea of making sure that you can at least get through lane phase, and then offer something to the bigger picture is pretty important. So I gave examples here of just like, these are the meta champions in the all-in category, the control category, the enchanter category, and the mage category. Meta and team meta. Oh yeah, so I mentioned that this is like, if your support is a very different player, like he doesn't play a lot of meta, this is where you guys can get really creative. Team meta differs from meta in this category, because support you can play literally like everything. So it just depends on your strengths and weaknesses as a team. Do you want to play the meta, or do you want to get creative? Okay, and that will be support. We'll move on. Let's go to mid lane. 2 types of mid laners. There's movers and there's laners. So an example of a mover is Talia or Ari. An example of a laner would be Jace mid. What am I trying to say? Who else? Oh yeah, so I said Hui, Ori, Victor, Azir, and maybe Ryze would be examples of laners, in the sense that they have a scaling element that will put the enemy team like under a lot of pressure to end the game fast, because they have such enormous late game power. And then you have your movers, which are typically more early mid game oriented. They're typically 1-item spikers or 1 to 2-item spikers that can influence other lanes than themselves, right?
Yeah.
Talia's OP because she fits in both categories. Okay, and so there's your framework. So now let's go here. So successful drafts have a good balance of main characters and some side characters, not too much of either. If you're going a carry jungle B1, so let's say a very common opener right now is Xin Zhao B1, you need a mover mid with it. So you need something like an Ari, something like a Ryze. I guess Ryze, the more I talk about it, I think Ryze would maybe be in the mover category.
Could be in the mover, yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
he could
yeah.
be either or. Like, if your lane's going poorly, like, you can be a mover. I think he's like a hybrid.
I think the reason I differentiated the two, I think he is a mover, but all of these champions listed, they spike on like 1 to 2 items, and Ryze plays for level 16, right?
Yeah.
So these champions are very similar in the sense that they want a ton of items, ton of resources, and whatnot. Ryze is maybe the one guy that will be a mover that also scales.
Yeah.
So just different priorities and stuff like that.
Yep.
So yeah, so mover mid paired with carry jungle. You're going to want a melee support and a utility slash carry. I mean, ADC is another one. You can just say like, if you can grab Varus, and if your ADC plays Varus, you guys are a good team like already. If not, you guys need to find what the equivalent of Varus is, for at least for you
Or
guys.
a new 80 carry.
Or a new 80 carry. Or just replace the whole team. Just nuke it. And then carry jungle means a tank top typically.
Yeah.
Low econ tank jungler. You're going to get a greedy laner mid. Range supports. I mentioned that range supports are really OP at this level because the laning is not very strong. So you've seen my stream a lot when I typically pick Nico, the enemy tower kind of just disappears, right? And we exit lane phase with like a pretty sizable advantage.
Yeah.
That's because the laning is not strong enough and the coordination is not strong enough at this level to really get the jungler involved and trade back on the Nico's trading pattern. Not just Nico, but like Lulu can do the same thing, or a bunch of other range supports. But yeah, that's where if you do go a utility low econ jungle, it opens up for this next level of support. Then you want a greedy top, and yeah, we said ADC is kind of mixed. And then I think I just have maybe a couple examples, and then we can move on from this. So in your practice, so in the 6 games that you guys have scrims and whatnot, you need to try data points and get trial and error in conversations about drafts. Pre-planning is mostly okay. I already mentioned that because you guys are losing and winning games based on your ability to execute your own team comp. It's not necessarily to do with the enemy team. So example, this draft we first rotationing Seju and Gwen. Top and mid will be main characters. Bot will be something safe like Zyra Khan. So I just gave like a couple examples. And then it's important to talk about after this kind of game. It's like, okay, how did we feel? Did our jungler do his job at like being mostly a facilitator? Did we like that? Yes, no. Why did one lane go well and one lane not? Like it's just rough examples. Yeah, Xin Zhao paired with like Ari, Galio, Talia, grabbing Corki and melee support, just kind of this stuff. See how it feels. And then being able to pivot mid-series. You lose game one and you go, okay, someone's not having a great day. Let's try to switch things up.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I'll give you this data so that you can use it as a reference point, and then we're going to move on to, you can ask me any questions or we can go through specific examples.
Awesome. Yeah, I DM'd you, I think, at least the recent 3 games where I just did the draft all by myself. So normally, so like right now I'm the assistant coach for a team, but I head coach when head coach can't be there.
Okay.
So he wasn't there for this draft where it was just me,
Yeah.
and then tonight it'll be just me as well.
Okay.
So I'm gonna use a little bit of what I have now to kind of like some FYI and like history with the team. We like to play. Right now, we're trying out a mid laner, so mid laner pool wasn't really set. We just locked the mid laner for tonight, which is great
Mm-hmm.
for the permanent team going forward. Jungle likes to play a lot of off meta, hence the Kane that you're going to see in game 3.
Oh, so you guys are Ink Fury. Okay.
We are Ink Fury, yes.
Okay.
Um, so we generally play meta everywhere except for jungle. Jungle pool, unfortunately, as of right now, is kind of specific, and I think I sent you a file with all of our primary picks that we like.
Oh, the champ pool stuff. Let me see if I can open it
Yeah,
and place
of
one of
like their
them.
favorite champs. The only one that's
Yeah.
been kind of updated is the jungle because I had to handshake and go, okay, well,
Okay.
we kind of need to meet halfway in the middle. We can't just be picking all off meta stuff. Like we have to be a little bit meta. So things like Pantheon that she doesn't mind playing.
Okay.
Um, Maokai once in a while she doesn't mind playing, right? In comps, like in basically, I have to allow like things like Zac, Kane, Morgana, Zyra, right?
Yep.
Um, but yeah, so we can kind of, if you want to kind of like,
Yeah. Let's talk about
or do
some
you
of these
want me to
drafts.
steer, or how do you want to?
I'll generate discussion. So you guys
Cool.
are Ink Fury, right?
Yes.
Am I reading that right? Okay. So
Yes.
we'll just go through some of the sequences, and I'll talk to you about some of the picks, and then we can talk about their champ pools and what draft pieces fit where, because it's important to know like what your blind picks are
Yes.
and what your non-blinders are. So Xin Zhao B1, very strong. You guys respond Kane and Vayne. The Kane pick shows that you guys are like super off meta, and your jungler is basically saying like, I'm going to, I guess, outscale him. I'm going to like be able to contest him later. Don't love the approach just because Xin Zhao is so well rounded and he
Yeah.
scales so well throughout the game. You don't want to give him a free pass through the game. You want to pressure him in some way. And I don't think Kane does that. So I don't see it, but I'm just gonna glaze over that just because it's proper to match jungle here. And he's
Yeah.
going for a niche counter pick, so maybe it has upside if he's like really, really insane at Kane. Next, we have the Vayne pick. This pick is only legal if it's a flex top, and even still, it's really bad this early. So Vayne is not a blindable ADC because she's historically really terrible in lane. There's way too many laning ADCs that will just like end her game before it starts. That's why we never see it in any of the regions right now. In addition to that, she is tied to Blade of the Ruined King's strength, unless there's a crit build that I don't know about. But I think currently Vayne is tied to Blade of the Ruined King's strength, and Blade of the Ruined King is one of the worst items in the game for range champions right now. It's just forgotten. So maybe some patch notes will change that in the future, but that's um, my initial thoughts on Vayne. So this pick shows that we're losing bottom like before it has even been picked.
Yep.
They go Victor Lulu, which kind of it's troll by them to do this. They should match ADC here. So the Jinx should just be there and they should hold support. But they go Vayne Lulu, or Victor Lulu, sorry. So they're showing a laning mid and a carry jungle, which is very greedy, which means if you guys did the mismatch that we talked about before, where you have a mover mid, you suddenly have more to play with. Because if you went something like, rough example, Silas or something like that, the Kane could then invade Xin Zhao's like second Raptor spawn, and then Silas is going to outdo Victor in that fight, right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
No, that makes sense.
Alistar is a self counter pick here. The Lulu matchup is really terrible because Alistar no longer has 3 abilities into Lulu because of polymorph, right? So like he combos in. 1, he can get canceled if he gets polymorphed midair. 2, and then he can also easily get canceled with Lulu's ultimate. But then 2, when Alistar goes to charge up his E, Lulu has like the easiest polymorph of her life, and he won't be able to get the auto attack off. Does that make sense? So
Yeah.
this support matchup just sucks. I just make sure to not to maybe understand this kind of stuff. And again, like you can use me as a resource anytime. So if you're curious about matchups or if your support is curious, I'd be happy to talk or shed some light here. So we've got our like typical engage support. Alistar has one of the lowest range engages. So getting onto Victor is going to be pretty hard this game. So I don't like your guys' chances of winning like just based off the first 3 because 1 laser and Vayne's like hard to re-enter the fight. We got Orianna, which is another laner. So we've got carry jungle laner, which means there's not going to be a lot of volatility. There's not going to be a lot of fighting in the first 6 levels, which is it's okay if you guys have like if you guys have promised value later. So if you guys are saying
Yeah,
like
and that's kind of what I'm like looking at now in the first 4 picks. Like how you explained it is exactly how like what I didn't want to happen because like I'm looking at their match and how exactly you spelt it out that their team and how like they're going to function is kind of like how I'm drafting the B1 Vayne just came from because this more or less I can be honest there wasn't as much thought on the actual AD carry pick as it was like hey is there an AD carry because we were in Fearless. I'm like let's pick something out of the box because this team like their spirits were a little down. First 2 games were rough. This was like a higher elo team to them. There was a few diamond players on it,
oh,
right?
this is game
And a
3.
couple of
Okay,
yeah,
gotcha.
this is game
Yep,
3.
yep, yep.
So they were 0-2 and they're like I needed something to lift their spirit, but I also wanted to more focus on the fundamentals and less draft. So I was more or less like something that wasn't going to be volatile is kind of what I was going for, something that's like a play safe and scale. And
Yeah.
let's focus on the fundamentals was what I was going with when I saw their 3 picks versus my 3.
Yeah.
So that's when I drafted it, and honestly, that Alistar pick is 100% just me. I asked support what he wanted, didn't say anything, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to pick you a matchup that's just going to like either handshake bot or you're just not going to do anything.
Right.
I said, but what you can do is roam your ass off, and then you
Yeah.
just don't interact in the lane. So that was kind of like my reason for picking it, right, wrong, or indifferent, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Okay.
just figured I should at least share my thought process,
Yep.
and if there's a counter to it, I'm for it. I'd rather say what I was truly feeling first thought, and
Totally.
be told like, yeah, that's kind of incorrect, versus like me just like hide behind why I picked these things.
No, totally. I agree that. Or I agree with like how you arrived at your conclusions. So if your mentality was to lower volatility and increase scaling and you've got the Vayne, the Alistar pick kind of kneecaps your draft a little bit because Vayne doesn't
Okay.
scale into this game. You want the range support if you want less volatility.
Okay.
So you're saying like, okay, so our Kane's going to go red Kane because I'm pretty sure in red,
Yes.
like in competitive, you should be going red Kane.
Yes.
So he's going to go red Kane. So he's our frontliner. So you've got like he's got the high econ sort of bruiser frontliner, like similar to Xin, where he's got that profile of like he can frontline for like a fucking decent amount of time. Right.
Yeah.
So this opens up the possibility of a range support, and that would enable Vayne a lot more. So if you guys had the Lulu on your Ignore Side or some like toxic enchanter. That would then, I would agree with everything you're saying about like, let's just get through the early game, let's just chill, and we'll just become monsters later. That would achieve that.
Okay.
But
So
the
what
Alistar wants
ranged ones would
to.
you recommend here into those three?
Sorry, say that again.
What range champions as an example would be really good into seeing Xin, Victor, Lulu for a range support here?
Xin, Victor, Lulu. So,
Or do you just not pick support? Was picking support here the troll part
no,
where I
you
should
would
just pick
match
the
support.
Ori?
No, your pick order is correct.
Okay.
You should match support here. Just knowing what champions could be really good for you. So anything from like Nami, Karma, Seraphine, honestly
Got it.
Soraka, Milio. Um,
Okay, got you.
I think Sona might be
Yeah.
troll. Like there's some of them that are kind of like not very good.
Yeah, like beats here. Okay.
But yeah, like Milio, Karma, Nami, Seraphine work like completely fine
Got it.
here, and that would give you guys like another element of scaling that you guys could like lean back on. Because yeah, your guys' comp doesn't have any mismatches. You guys have your equal jungle, you're getting shit on bot lane like already like
Yeah.
that. You can just see that from like the Vayne blind. And then you're matching mid. So where are you going to win the draft? You have to win the draft on R5 here. So when they show Poppy, let's just pretend they know what you're doing. So they said to themselves, they've lost the draft right now. We have winning bottom no matter what because we have support counter. Like this is a hard matchup, and then we have our choice of AD carry. So we're gonna win bottom. We're gonna go neutral mid. We're gonna go neutral jungle, and then the game is like won. So we're just gonna pick a solid neutralizing champion in the Poppy blind to offer some stability so that we can achieve what we're trying to achieve, which is Jinx with a crazy good front line, a lot of utility, and a lot of like defense with the Lulu. And they've done that. So I actually don't know what you can possibly pick on R5 here to actually save the draft, because your champions have a set sort of speed. Like Orianna plays slow scale, Kayn plays slow scale until form, Vayne plays slow scale, and Alistar plays. Alistar wants to play fast, but surrounded by these champs, they can't do anything. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So
I can see why it doesn't make sense.
yeah, so R3 is kind of where, or like sort of R1 is rough, and then R3 is sort of where the draft kind of goes out the window. So in hindsight, knowing like, what are we trying to achieve? Like it all goes back down to like this top line right here. Drafting with a purpose in mind, right? Do we want to fist fight early? Do we want to dive towers? Do we want late game scaling? And do we want a team fight? Because this draft shows team fighting, but Alistar really wants to like push the pace and get some dives going in some side lane or something, right? He wants a job, right? And he can't lane, so he has to roam. But roaming to a Victor lane, he's never killing this Victor unless it's a dive. And he doesn't have other champions that succeed, like are really good at diving, similar to like Nocturne Ori or like or whatever. Like you could make an argument that Kayn might fit there, but it's really hard to dive Victor. It's also like impossible to dive Poppy. So so you guys don't have like a clear job for Alistar in this game. So it would just feel really bad being the support in this game.
And you know what's funny? Out of these 3 games, this was the only draft game we won.
You guys won. You guys won this set.
We won game 3.
All right.
We lost these other 2, but that's what it's weird because I'm looking at it and I hear what you're saying, and now I'm like, how the hell did we even win? And I think it's just because we wallet checked them because we actually won the bot lane matchup.
Okay. Yep. So again, it comes down to.
So I guess it just came down to the fact that we just executed crap better than they executed their crap. Because if we both execute evenly
100%.
on an even playing field, we just lose just because of draft gap.
Yep. So like I'm gonna play it in my head and I'm gonna pretend like without seeing footage, I'm gonna assume the Lulu does not know to save Polly for the Alistar. I'm just gonna assume that that's true. I'm gonna assume one of these players hugged a wall and let Vayne get a condemn, right? Maybe you guys had a really good counter gank or some shit like that, right?
Right, but out of the ordinary stuff is what happened.
Yeah.
Because on paper, like if this was a Masters team versus Masters team, chances are we just lose this game.
Yeah, you 100% lose early game, and then your late game is like Vayne has to 1v9 with no help, right?
Got it.
So it's important, like when you're drafting, to go, this is what our comp should do, and you need to fail and succeed on that multiple times to understand, like, okay, this is what hurts, this is what really doesn't hurt. All right, let's go game 2. So we blind Volibear, which is like jungle top flex, maybe not, but Volibear jungle in general, I'm kind of a fan. I think he pushes the pace early, but it's important that you pair him with champions that will give him jobs. Like you want pushing lanes, you want dives to go off, you want early game aggression, you want skirmish. So they answer Pantheon Xayah. So Xayah, really good anti-dive champion, and Pantheon,
Oh,
really
I'm
good
sorry. Let
skirmisher.
me let me say this. We are red side here. They just didn't swap the titles. I apologize.
Oh,
We are
okay.
red side.
Okay. So, anyways, like I'm complimenting both
Yeah.
sides, so it's like it's
Yeah.
good
Yeah.
good
Yeah.
for you so far.
Yeah. Good for me so
So
far.
yeah, the
Woo!
volley is good here, and they you grab up the anti dive ADC and then Pantheon. Then this is where the draft gets a little rough because they're gonna double down and say we're gonna spend our entire early game bot side and we're just gonna punish the Xayah's range because this lane phase is very hard. She's countered from the support's reach and the AD carry's reach, so she can't really lane. So you guys have a problem on R2 after seeing these two champions because you're going to get chunked down, and then Volibear has a very easy early game to play. He's just going to walk behind your tower, press R, and it doesn't really matter if you have ulti up as Xayah if you have no HP from all the poke, right?
Yeah.
So what I would pick here on R3, you need to. The only thing that Kate Lux is afraid of is all in kill pressure, and Rakan is very bad in lane phase. His
Okay.
lane
So this
is
should have
one of
been
his
like a
weaker points.
Nautilus or
This
something.
should have been a Nautilus, I think.
Got it.
And again, like
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
biased, I play a lot of Nautilus, but I'll show
Right. I
you.
could see the angle though.
Yeah, so other champions that might work in this spot, Leona would be great.
Right.
What else? If you're like a psycho, like nah, I wouldn't want to go Pike here. Blitzcrank here. If you're like again, like I don't love Blitzcrank, so Nautilus would be my champion of choice here. Where it's just like I'm gonna make sure that Kate Lux, when they're trying to smash my tower and poke my ADC, they at least have to be scared of something, right? And I
Right.
don't think anyone's scared of Rakan. Like if Rakan W's in, Lux can just Q Rakan, and then you're eating the trap combo, and then you're fucked. Like it's very hard to get through this lane as the Xayah Rakan. But you guys have a lot of scaling. You guys have like a tremendous mid game to look forward to with what you've drafted so far. So you haven't answered like how to get through lane, but the champions synergize. It's pretty easy to go like Xayah Rakan plus like fighter jungle, and it's like pretty awesome. On R4 here, I would almost
LeBlanc is
I
so
would
good.
I would always go a mid that makes my mid jungle scary. So this
Yeah.
is a carry jungle. So in the future, when you have a carry jungle, you're gonna want a mover mid. So if you guys pick Talia on 4, or any of the movers we talked about, Ari, these kind of
Yeah.
champions, these champions have more shit to be scared of, right? So when Volibear goes for the bot dive, does Ari have move? Because then he has to be hesitant. He has to be scared. And if Ari counters that dive and gets a triple kill, like the game's fucked, right? But Hui
Hmm.
is never, ever, 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 ever going to help Xayah Rakan getting fucked under a tower, right? So
Right.
that's
Yeah.
how.
No, that
So
makes
that's another piece, foundational piece we can throw together as like a piece of knowledge of mover mid helps bot a lot. So if you guys have like a shit bot matchup, grabbing a mover mid can save that aspect because there's windows where the mover mid is going to be able to counter the bot aggression or whatever.
would you consider Galio a mover mid or no?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
Yep. So he
Because
can
I
join with
figured
his
with your
global, but he
just
can also
depending on
just
global. Yeah.
yeah, but he can also just sack waves because he's like lower econ, right?
Yeah.
So
Okay.
if he really, really wants to save you guys down here, he can just walk behind these guys and try to like you don't
Yeah.
have to necessarily aggress on them, but you're trying to get Xayah some fucking time and room in the
Hmm.
game, right?
Got it. Got it.
Because into this lane matchup, she's never getting BF sword, she's never getting the good bases, she's like suffering, and Volibear wants to dive, so it's like you have to answer what's going on here. So mover mid would have been good here, and in general, like given the heavy bot side, like enemy team is pure bot side with these 3 picks, and you are going to match that bot side aggression with your 4 picks. So I would make sure to maintain R5 for our top laner just to make sure that he's in a matchup where he doesn't need to get visited because we
Okay.
are not going bot lane, or we're only going bot lane in this draft, right?
Okay. So so say they B1 Caitlyn here. That's also just a telltale that they're going to play for bot just because of the
Yes.
pureness of what the AD carry
Yep.
offers. So
Yep.
then I should respond with AD carry, and then like obviously like I can go like jungle. That doesn't really matter, but I just need to
Yep.
make sure that my mid is like a mover mid that can influence the bot side unless we think that we can find a better duo that will slam a Caitlyn X lane.
Yes, I think I agree with everything you said. So Caitlyn in this category, so when we look at the AD carry types, Caitlyn is she's not very high in utility. Like she has the traps,
Right.
right? But when I think about the word utility, I think less dependent. And Caitlyn is a hyper carry. Like
Yes.
without
I
like
agree.
a lot of people might disagree with my wording, but Caitlyn is she will convert 10 out of 10 in terms of if I give her all the items, she will convert. She will fucking murder people, right?
Right.
And her drafting lane phase control is also a 10. That's where she's super, super strong. So
Hmm.
the downside of Caitlyn is if she doesn't win lane, she's awful. Her hyper carry attribute goes down to like a 2, right? She has a horrible game if she is not escorted to 15 plates or like 5 plates, right? She wants to murder her tower. So if you counter this, you win, right? That's the way you got to look at
Right.
Caitlyn in general. But like when they draft like this, Draven is the same thing. If we win bottom, we're playing a 4v5. That's the way this works, right?
So I guess in the case here, when they draft volley, what picks would you have countered with? Like obviously, like I think jungle's fine. Like you
Yep.
said, like Pantheon, Zin, Vi, Jarvan, right? Copy
Yep.
pasta in there, whatever. And then what would you go B2 here?
Corki or Ezreal are great examples.
I see.
Corki,
Okay. And those
Ezreal,
are the
maybe
yeah.
maybe Ash, maybe depending on your team. Like if you have Brainy Fan on your team, you can go Jin.
So
Um,
my AD carry plays a lot of Brandy fan champs.
Yeah. So MF is, I mean, MF is not great because there's no mobility there. So I would love, so when I see this, I go, Volibear's coming behind my tower and he's going to turn off my tower and he's going to dive me. So I have to at least have a dash or some form of like punish that mobility, right? Zaya
Okay.
does that, but Zaya sucks in lane. So it gives the champions that Volibear will be beside an opportunity to poke her down, right?
Okay.
So if I go
So would the
Ezreal,
Xayah pick have been fine as long as I like know that I'm sacking bottom and I'm playing for a moving mid to help alleviate that bot? If that was my game plan, is that still fine to do?
Uh, I agree. I wouldn't use the word sack because you cannot sack bot in this game.
Okay, yeah, maybe sack was
You
the wrong
have
word.
to protect bot. You have to
Yeah,
buy bot lane the time that they need and breathing room. That's like the big thing here, right?
I guess yeah, that was more or less what I was asking because you said as long as I go in with a plan. So if I go in with a plan that the first like 6 levels are going to be really rough for Xayah Rakan, but we plan on having a mover mid that after that is going to be able to help complement bot lane. Is that
Yep.
still an okay plan, even though it's bad into Caitlyn Lux?
Yep. 100%.
Okay, okay,
Yep.
yeah, that's
Because no one drafts perfectly, right? Like when you
right,
pick
right,
Zaya
right.
here, the enemy team can pick like a lot of really toxic champions that can make your life hard. But they're the reason pro teams don't do this is because going Kate Lux is very, very risky unless you also have like the jungle gap, right?
Got it.
And it's telegraphed what these guys are going to do. So if we pick the Ari, and I'm TPing behind you and I'm using my ult to just cover bottom, and you guys fail, Caitlyn Lux is so dog shit from behind, right?
Got it.
So you're
Okay.
all in. So this draft from these 3 picks, you can know that bot lane is the utmost importance. We need to either buy ourselves some fighting power with the Nautilus, or we need to buy ourselves some time with like yeah, like we already talked about it. So then
Yeah.
R4, I would go for a mover to help
Yeah.
alleviate this pressure. They grab the mover, which means like I'd say this is like bot lane. This game after these 4 picks is literally World War II. like
Yes.
this is fucked for this Zaya is not having a good time with these 4 picks. And then blind pick Alawi or not blind pick counter pick Alawi to the Cassante. So that's just a bit of a nightmare. Because now you guys have too many lanes that need help. You have Hui, which is like chilling. Like he's a laner. He can like fist fight Talia. And that he's one of the only ones like your mid jungle this game are chilling. Your top is suffering for the next 45 minutes, and your bot lane is World War II, right?
Yeah.
From the draft
Yeah.
perspective.
In this game, the Cassante goes 1-9, and we can't ever kill this Alawi.
Exactly. So try to save the R5 for
And
your
Caitlyn Lux
top
actually
laner.
got put behind because we put a lot of hard focus bottom. We permapath bottom, and we
Nice.
actually fisted laning phase, and then got
Right.
into the mid game, and then we ended up just like team fighting poorly, and obviously like we got wallet checked by an Alawi that was just fully
Gotcha.
fed.
Yeah, this game would be demoralizing to play because me as the Rakan, I would feel really bad. Me as the Zaya would feel really bad, and then Cassante.
Yeah, that makes
Let's look
sense.
at one more. Are we Ink Fury?
We are.
Okay, so B1 Varus is super OP because he's got tons of wave control tools, so he can buy himself through the lane phase um, and flexible builds, and he can be a main character or a side character. They answer Ari Ash, which means they've got a mover mid and they've got lane control ADC utility to match. So you guys are tied in ADC right now, essentially. Like Varus is the better champion, but you guys have the same role. And then they've got a mover, so they're already showing like presence towards bottom because Ash typically plays very active in the first 10 minutes on the wave, and so does Varus. So there's already like a little bit of volatility or fighting that can happen there. And then Ari's gonna threaten to join. You guys answer Mel and Thresh. So you've got a laner. Mel is not a mover; she's a laner. So similar to the Hui idea, your bot lane is now left on an island. So it's very, very important that you do not pick support here because if you're blind picking support, you're double countered, right?
So if we wanted to pick the Zach, this is where we just pick Zach because
Yes,
we don't want to get
yes.
countered.
Yeah, so this is
Okay,
why Zach
okay.
sucks. This is why Zach, you don't see Zach anywhere on this site because Zach
Right,
is
right.
punishable already. You just pick Vi. Like, if you want, like, engage or you want a tank, like, just go Sedge. Just go, like, these champions are just better than Zach. That's why you don't see Zach,
Yeah, what's
right?
tough is like her champ pool is I think do you have her champ pool by
Yeah,
chance?
yeah. I'll
Is that
look it
a
up. I'll
thing?
look it up just after
Yeah, I was
talking
gonna
about
say
this
if you
draft.
yeah, I was gonna say if
Yeah.
you could see like what you would have input before, but go ahead,
Okay,
sorry.
cool. Yeah, so can't go support here because your bot lane will
That makes
get
sense.
obliterated. In addition to that, I'm a Thresh hater. I think he's useless and he just doesn't win lane. And he's a champion that kind of needs to win lane because he's a jack of all trades. He doesn't frontline well. He doesn't have near the peel that Alistar has.
Okay.
He doesn't have long range. He's a catch champion with a lot of counters. So you only have one hook target showing, which is the Ash. Ari has ult and move speed on her W. She's never going to get hit by hook. So this pick is just very, very punishable. And then, like I said, we don't have a mover mid. We have a laner mid, so you're not getting help. They answer Zyra. Is this Zyra support or jungle?
So it ends up obviously like if you look at it in this, it's technically a flex pick.
Yeah.
But I in the comms I said it was going to be bot lane, so it is a bot lane.
It should be a bot lane just because Ash Zyra is like a known combo,
Yeah.
and then also you have like plants to
It
put in front
counters
of a Thresh
Thresh.
hook. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
really annoying. So this sucks. And I watched this in your Twitch chat and I said like bot lane looks hard, or matchup
Yeah.
looks hard. The Amumu on 4, which honestly it gives you guys a way to win the game because this team comp loses to a very important 1250 gold item called Mercury Chuds.
Hmm.
So that's nice. So you want to make sure your last two picks can build mercs if possible. And then we grab Zach and Mordekaiser. So in this context, I actually like the Zach pick because he has value into a lot of these champs,
Right.
and he can go mercs, and he gets a free pass through the early game because Amumu jungle does not pressure super hard in the early levels. He's playing for level 6, so these are good Zach conditions, but it's a nightmare in bot lane. That's like the only thing that I think is like horrible in this draft,
Right.
because counter pick support, like we already talked about. And then we blind pick Mordekaiser when you already see Amumu, which is like, I think that's pretty smart because Amumu's not really killing a Mordekaiser other than holding him down. And if he goes Mercs, he's not going to be caring about that. And then they kind of pick Gnar.
Yep.
So their draft is crazy weak to Merc Treads, but they have a winning bot by far. Like, I think these guys should just get obliterated by long range poke.
Yep.
No one is helping them because Zach, again, he's like playing for levels and stuff, and he can try. It might work, but then the Mel is never helping. So I don't like it from that perspective.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot more sense when the game's broken down to, and I guess this is something that I need to learn. And now that you've broken it down, it kind of makes it like shed a lot more light. Like what are meta mover mids? Because it seems like mid lane kind of determines what your draft needs to be. If like from the way that you've
Yeah,
explained it, it almost sounds like your mid lane is what determines what your so if you pick a non mover mid, you need to make sure that you're not picking both bot laners uh, when you don't pick a moving mid
yeah,
because it can't be influenced. So you need
exactly.
to make sure it's solid, so you just don't draft it together.
Yep, yep.
Okay. That makes more sense.
Yeah. So again, it just comes back down to the first thing that we mentioned of just having a purpose in mind, right? So if we're saying like our support really wants to play Thresh, okay, we're gonna blind pick Thresh, but we're gonna at least pair it with a carry jungle and a mover mid, right?
Right.
So that there's a main character, there's a side character, and no matter what this team is going to be picking, our draft still makes sense, right? The Thresh has a job. The Thresh can maybe look to roam and help some of the aggression going on in the map because we have a mover mid. We're going to be diving top. We're going to be playing around grubs. We're going to do XYZ, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of ways to like kind of massage your draft to make some of the picks a lot more like legal if you have like a weird champ pool. Do you want me to put in this like doc like what's blindable, what I think is blindable or whatnot for the roles on the champ pool that they have?
Yes.
Okay,
That'd be good.
so
And then something like in future, maybe that I would like to do if you would be down for it. Like if I book another session like next week or something, do you think like we could do like a draft war and then just kind of like practice like us drafting against each other and like I guess you can call it make believe comps to make sure
yeah,
that I understand the
yep,
concepts that you're saying and
yep,
that they make sense, whether it's like good, bad, or indifferent.
yep.
And then after we can kind of discuss like this isn't a mover mid or X.
Yeah, 100%. We can do that just to compare notes. I think
Yeah.
it's good for that. It's just
Okay.
important to know like everything we try and accomplish here is theory based, and it's on your
Right.
players to be able to try and execute some of the things that the champions are doing.
Right.
At the end of the day, the better team should still kind of win. But this is
Okay.
good to get your ducks in order.
Yeah.
So our team's champ pool. Oops. But yeah, 100%. If you got,
Okay.
I'm assuming you have an infinity channel points. So, okay,
We're over a few
so
100,000.
Blind Jung is Nocturne, Panth, and that is it. Oh, and technically Zyra. Um, Counters are Kane, Echo. I'll put Lilia first for sure, and in all caps because she's like you should like if you have a proficient Lilia player, you should play this champion often. The second you see the enemy jungle is a champion that helps Lilia like thrive, which is like Maokai, I think Skarner, I think Sedge, and then a melee support or something like that. Like if you ever do drop jungle, because when we talk about mover mids are mostly blindable. So like grabbing up Ari, grabbing up let me just
Leah.
see. Yeah, like he doesn't play it, but I'm just looking at what he actually
Right.
does play. But grabbing up Ari is like should be a staple for you guys, and you guys should try to
Right.
learn how to play that Ari lane phase into many different matchups as proficiently as possible. Like try to
Right.
mitigate loss because in a lot of times like they'll grab like Oriana and that lane's really hard. But the payoff is there, right? If we've drafted it in a way that makes sense, the Ari still has a job, right? She can lose gracefully in mid, and then she can offer the team a whole lot. Or again, like if you have like Ari Pantheon, you can threaten the Oriana in a very meaningful way, right?
Got it.
So Lilia is really good, but then I'll put Echo, Kane, Viego, and Fiddle. Is that everything? I think that's everything. Okay, so these are. I'll just go like this. Jung. I'll just put in background so we know. Mover, Yon, Victor, Hui, Ori. Counters are. Where does that leave us with Silas and Aurelia? What do we play here? Jin, Jinx, Varus. Whoa, that's concerning.
Whoops.
Yeah, that's a lot of non-blindable ADCs because that's like
I guess
pretty.
what other ones would you put in there? So those are just like so he has a good size champ pool list, but we told them only pick like a couple.
Yeah.
So if like you have recommendations, like absolutely insert recommendations in
Yeah.
like
Okay. I'll do that
parentheses
as well.
on even on like jungle picks. The only thing is my jungler she won't play Jar. Unfortunately, she will not play Jarvan or Sejuani, but is open to anything else, which
Okay.
is unfortunate. But
And then Recon is fine. Counters. Okay. And I put not really just because, like, I put it there because a lot of people do. I say not really because it can get really shit on by a lot of things. Like, anytime I see Braum, I'm like, oh, I just have, like, the freest fucking lane phase in the world. And I can abuse that really hard. But
got it.
I say it's, again, like, it's legal if you can find a way to make it legal. So if we have, like, Sejuani Braum, and then we have a mover mid that auto attacks a lot, like Silas or something, we're a very low range comp, but our comp's OP as fuck, right?
Got it.
We have like, yeah, we have a lot of early game aggression to offer in that. Top blinds. Jesus. Yeah, that's a little rough too.
Whoops. So he also he does play Nar well.
There's a good one, yeah.
Um,
Irelia and you're having Irelia flex. That's OP.
yeah.
I would recommend adding. And then we'll go top, jung, AD, mid, sup. I don't know why I did that. I am brainless. And then we'll go here. Okay. Scion is blindable and really OP.
I have a question. What are your thoughts on potentially a Rumble flex between top and jungle and Emerald?
um, I don't like flex picks in general that aren't like super easy champions. So like Maokai's a good
Okay,
example of a flex pick that works in comp because
got
he's
it.
fucking simple in
Super
at least
easy.
the
Yeah,
mechanics of it, right? So you usually have a jungle player that can play Maokai. To ask your support to learn Maokai is very easy. That's very reasonable. To
I see.
then say, okay, we're gonna go with a Rumble Flex, but the champion needs setup. So if we're playing it in jungle, we have to have CC and AD damage elsewhere. That's hard to find, right? So it makes your drafts kind of like complex. And if you don't put the Rumble in the right spot and with the surrounding pieces that make sense, your draft sucks, right?
Yeah, makes
So
sense.
it's very easy to like shoot yourself in the foot. I've had like way too many examples of drafts that go completely sideways based on
Niche picks.
yeah, based on not putting the
Got it.
flex in the right spot, it just fucks over everything, and suddenly your draft sucks ass.
Okay.
Jax and top lane in Italy. Holy, have you seen that at all? Like, have you been watching Pro at all? She's
Yeah.
crazy. And
I
these
don't I
aren't.
don't know if my Emerald top laner is gonna learn it, but I could
Where's jungle? Okay, bye. Zin. Do we know Skarner? We don't know Skarner.
yeah, so she does. I've been making her play Skarner, but yeah, that's gonna be slowly added.
Honestly, like all of those. What else? The Lilia is really good to have. That's really important.
Yeah. And now Nefiri after her second nerf, probably not, yeah.
Yeah, I'm like purposely leaving that stuff out.
Got it.
And then the Pantheon's really good too. So yeah, that's all I would add for now.
Okay.
Um, mid lane, what are we missing? Oh, Talia, Azir. Now these champions are super like Azir's like fucking impossible to play. So a lot of these are like I would recommend, but if you can't, like don't change your whole life, you know.
Yeah, it looks like movers are kind of like higher prio and probably lower elo comp. No.
Uh, it depends. It really depends because if my bot lane is not like you have two kinds of AD carries, right? You have the AD carries that are like I say um like utility players, right? Like really good at lane phase and really good at just being a piece of the puzzle. And then you have like main character AD carries that are like I want to play Kaisa and I want everyone to play around me, right? And
Right.
they'll carry the late game. So I like to think that most AD carry players fit into like one of those categories. The ones that fit into both are probably like really high elo, right? So if
Okay.
my AD carry is gonna be that like stable Ezreal player, that stable Ashe player that's like he's not gonna win us the game, but he's gonna sit mid and not die while we kind of attack side lanes. Then your top laner can be the main character. So it really just depends who you think. And again, like it comes back to this conversation that I had here, where you need to practice it, and the coach you can share this with players. You can ask players what they think, but you should also have an idea in your head of like on match day, is my jungler be wanting Zin or Skarner, right?
Right.
Like you should have an idea of in your mind. So mover mid does not make sense if our mid laner is maybe the best player in our team, right?
Yeah. Right now, our team identity is a lot of bot focus.
Yeah. So then mover mid would help you out tremendously, I think.
Yeah.
Um, I'm kind of an Aurora fan, just because it pairs well with the carry junglers. Like Zin plus Aurora are like pretty OP, but Aurora has like fallen down in the meta. So some of these you can just like
Yeah.
ignore if you want.
Install that.
Honestly, for your guys' level, Annie's really good too.
Especially with a recent buff. Not bad.
Yeah, Annie's a mover too,
Yeah.
because
Oh
she
my god, my
smokes like
coach
one
would
item.
love it. So my coach's name is Firefly, and he's an Annie OTP.
Love it.
If you know the lore, but she's like nicknamed Firefly.
Corky, where are we here? Vars, Corky. What else are we doing? MF is so fucking important. Jinzai, Callista, Jinx. And maybe, do we play Ashe? We don't play Ashe. Maybe play Ashe. All right. And then support. What do we have here? Not, Rel. Uh, yeah, I'll leave that. Oh, jungle could learn Poppy as well. Support could learn Poppy as well. Okay. Anything else we want to go over?
I think that covers it for now for this session. I think this will be good for me to kind of like swallow, and then what I'll do is I'll try my best to implement tonight a lot of what I learned today, and then when I redeem next, maybe the next one can be okay. Now that we've learned a little bit more, let's see how the drafts got maybe a little bit better or a little bit worse because I'm experimenting, and then maybe end with like a little bit of like okay, now that you understand like what champs and what they do, let's do a little bit of like a little bit of a draft war and kind of see
Yeah, man.
what I'm missing. But no, this is a really good start. It's definitely a huge help. I appreciate it.
Yeah. If you can indulge in some of that and then under 30-second timers, like try to pick a comp that
That's
makes
gonna be
sense.
the hard part,
That's
man.
why
Like,
that's why I'm a big fan of pre-planning comps at this level because you're not losing based on matchups. Nobody at the Emerald level is playing the Ari versus Ori matchup so insanely well from game start to game end that you can't win if you could draft that shit. So I would blind Ari. I
right.
would find the competitive staples that are like this champion really fucks with what our players are good at and want to do, right?
Okay. Yeah, I guess what I'll do probably from here, probably just to start for tonight, is Probably pick a lot of the mover mids and see how many of those can fit into my mids champ pool as just like an idea. And then
Hmm.
I can always like involve my draft ideas from there. Because we also need to figure out who we are as a team because this will be the first night where we actually have all 5 players that are locked in and like this is our roster. So
Okay.
I think it'll be
Yeah.
good to find out our team identity. But as of right now, it's winning bot side.
Yeah. I hope it goes well for you, and I hope you guys have some roster stability to lean back on, so you guys can actually learn something.
Yeah. No, like I said, I appreciate the time and the last minute scheduling of this. I do appreciate it.
Yeah, man. And again, if you want to send me your drafts at the end of your night and just ask me what I think, I can give you a rundown.
Yeah, no, I greatly appreciate it.
All right, I'm gonna go be miserable in solo queue.
Yeah, best of luck. Good luck on your climb, man.
All right, later.
Also, good hearing from you. See ya.
Yep.